Hello everyone, my name is Jinhao Han.
My name is Yuyi Li.
My name is Minghao Sun.
So for our project, we want to introduce the Renaissance through its art, especially in Italian. We looked especially at the artwork of three of the most prominent figures during the time: Michelangelo, Leonardo da Vinci, and Raphael. So, what is the Renaissance? Before we begin introduce their works, we want to discuss what the Renaissance is. Basically, it was a cultural moment they take place from the 15th to the 17th century throughout the whole Europe, especially in Italian. And the Renaissance means the rebirth in French, and its ideas was focused on the renewable the interest in classical learning, especially the writing of ancient Greece and Rome. This period was marked by a change in the way people thought about themselves and world. With the rise of the printing press, more commoners was getting access to information, increasing enlightenment and intellectual interest. People were becoming less fixed on religious beliefs and wanted to expand their own individual knowledge. Overall, there was a renewal of human spirit, um, curiosity, and creativity. Started in Italian. So over the several centuries, Italian has becoming rich and powerful through the trade and banking. With Florence, this is the center of the Italian, and Venice, especially becoming the centers of the art and culture. So many famous investors, painters, such as the Michelangelo or Da Vinci, those people has been occurred in that time period.
Now we want to talk about the themes of Renaissance, humanism, and realism. During the Renaissance, educated people began to embrace an intellectual movement based on humanism and realism. They took beyond the Bible and searched their own soul, as well as classical literature, or for meaning and wisdom. Humanism advanced during this time. Humanism was a bridging together of classical ideology with traditional Christian thought. It was a movement that came from what we today would call humanist, which includes the study of philosophy, history, and language. Realism, too, was on rise, with artists more interested in depicting natural elements of reality rather than grandiose representations of life. As a result, artists began painting in perspective and using shading to increase the realism of the work. During this time, oil-based paintings were also used for the first time. As we will see shortly, the Renaissance period's focus on humanism and realism, and also mean a shifting mind frame and values. Artists were beginning to focus more on virtue than money and fame. As such, they represented everyday life, even when focusing on religious works. This will be seen when examining works such as Mona Lisa, Virgin of the Rock, and the Creation of Adam.
The High Renaissance was a 35-year-long period inside the Renaissance in which art played particular importance and during which many famous works were created. It was labeled high because it was a period in which its art successfully achieved, and the goal of the Renaissance centered on humanism, simplicity, cultural importance, and realism. This period revolves around three towering figures: Leonardo da Vinci, Michelangelo, and Raphael.
So now we introduce the Leonardo da Vinci. So the Da Vinci was the ultimate Renaissance man. He was a genius who studied all aspects of arts, science, and cultures. So we all know that, right? and he was also the first scientist to perform the human dissections to study the arts and cultures of the first artist to introduce the oil painting in Italian. So we all know that the Mona Lisa, one of the Da Vinci's most famous artwork, was created at the beginning of the 16th century. The painting was made by oil on wood, and today it's set in the Louvre Museum in Paris, France. And the painting is like an example of the high Renaissance art and is financed as it includes several themes of the Renaissance. So, firstly, the Da Vinci now infamous painting portraits of a very typical woman, dressed in simple clothes that difference from the worn during this time period. The woman does not have any the worth or money, but seems content with her simplicity. This represents the Renaissance volume of the virtue over money and power. So the Da Vinci's painting also captures the Renaissance scenes of the naturalism and the realism. So we can see this from today's different museums, art museums, or different places there. Where probably will show the Da Vinci's some artworks about the nature. Like we will talk about the artwork named the Virgin of Works or something else. So the realism of his painting is like a result of a painter's scientific background, particular and especially his focus on the human anatomy. You can see the careful perspective that is incorporated in the way Mona Lisa's head and ass are each turned a little more toward and viewed. The scene perspective is captured by the distance by the subject in the foreground and objects in the background. So it's like different layers or the three different layers. Here, the Da Vinci uses the perspective to create the illusion of depth. So it's like so we all know the perspective is a very popular style or the form in the illumination. So that's the very important part of that. Though something is like in the distance and the smaller the scale, the more muted the color and less details, the outliers.
So now I want to talk about one of the technique of oil painting, submetal. This technique is to show how the light bounces off her skin in certain places while leaving other parts in darker shadows. Her skin appears to be soft and smooth, and she looks quite like a real, though perhaps somewhat idealized, woman would look like right in front of us. The term submetal is derived from the Italian word for smoke and was one of the four techniques of Renaissance paintings. It refers to the technique of oil painting, in which colors or tones are blended in such a subtle manner that they melt into one another without transitions, lines, and edges. In the Mona Lisa, submetal is used to show how the light bounces off the subject's skin in some places while leaving others in darker shadows. This increases realism as it brings out the smoothness of her skin. This same effect can also be seen in Da Vinci's earlier works, such as the Virgin of the Rocks.
Now we are focused on the Virgin of the Rocks. During the Renaissance period, there was a flourishing of art and culture, added by the investment from the Catholic Church. Although everyone in Europe at that time was Roman Catholic, and the Church was extremely powerful. Many popes were great patrons of artists. We will later see how Pope Julius commissioned Michelangelo to paint the Sistine Chapel. Similarly, Leonardo da Vinci was commissioned to paint the Virgin of the Rocks as part of an altarpiece for his chapel in the Church of San Francisco Grande in Milan in 1483. There are two versions of Da Vinci's Virgin of the Rocks. One is in Louvre, and the other one is in the National Gallery in London. Both were painted by the artists in Milan. These two paintings are a good place to start to define the qualities of the new style of High Renaissance. The painting is one of the first that use oil painting in Italy, and it captures the theme of the Renaissance, such as virtue, realism, and naturalism. Although the painting depicts the religious character of Virgin Mary, it is so in a relatable, natural setting. For instance, unlike traditional representation of Mary, in which she is elevated to a higher standard, here Mary sits on the ground, becoming the Madonna of humility. Through the lightened shade, Da Vinci also amplified realism, just as Mary is presented as more human. The setting she is placed is not heavy and grand. She was traditional representation of the area, but dark and misty. The atmosphere is foggy and hazy through use of aerial perspective and submatter, which also blends the light and dark areas of the subject to bring out the realism. Again, Da Vinci's scientific background is also seen in how he created the illusion of the space by making the figure look and gesture at one another to unify his information. Overall, like in Mona Lisa, specific techniques were used to embody the Renaissance idea.
1495, the Last Supper. In the Last Supper, that is located at the convention of the Santa Maria degli Grisi in the Milan, Italy. So we again to say that Da Vinci's focus on realism and humanism. The painting illustrates the scene from the last days of Jesus. So the Jesus has just declared that one of them will betray him, named Judah. The picture depicted the reaction of each display to the news. So it uses the complex features such as the mathematical symbolisms and the perspective and the focus to make it like an important example of high Renaissance aesthetics. Like all other religions, painting covering this scene. So the Jesus is the center of the conversation. His head represents the vanishing point for perspective lines, bring out the use of the linear perspective and drawing him in full focus of our attention. So the linear perspective is a linear system of the spatial alignment which creates an illusion depth on the two-dimensional surface. So it was mastered for the first time during the Italian Renaissance. The painting is also untraditional in that, unlike in most other artworks of the topic, or the guests are seated on the same side and all their expressions are visible to viewers. So additionally, to set the Judas apart, however, the Da Vinci kept his head in a lower position than anyone else in the picture, and makes him the only person left in shadow. The painting also placed more important on the diagonal rather than colorato.
Now I want to discuss about the diagonal versus the colorato. For the Florentine Renaissance artist, in Italian Renaissance art, the term coloredo means coloring and was prioritized by artists in Venice, who placed more importance on color pigments and tones in painting. Disnego, on the other hand, favored the art of drawing over colorism because it was thought to be completely connected to the intellectual conception of the painting, making it superior to the art of coloring. Which was important was a great debate amongst artists, especially during the High Renaissance. Da Vinci's use of Disnego increased in his reputation as an intellectual artist and creative thinker rather than just a decorative painter. Later, this skill was further used by Michelangelo and others. Now we talk about the Michelangelo. He is one of the most famous personalities of the Renaissance period. He saw the human body as an ultimate vehicle for emotional expression and used it as inspiration for much of his art. In the beginning of the 16th century, he was commissioned by Pope Julius II to paint the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel. This painting makes up one of many of his works as a result. And now we'll talk about the creation of Adam. One of the artist's most valued pieces captures themes of the Renaissance, such as realism and humanism. Although it is a religious painting, the artist takes great lengths to make his central two subjects, God and Adam, relatable. God differs from topical creation since painted up until at that time. He is elderly but muscular with gray hair and a long beard. Usually, God was depicted in art as a majestic, powerful, royal, and all-powerful. Michelangelo, however, dresses him in a light tunic, which leaves his arms and legs exposed. God here is most reliable to the intimate. And for Adam, one on the other hand, seems very casual, as he lunges back with his arm outstretched before he is given life by God. His body forms a concave shape, which differs from God's floating form. Overall, the twisting muscular bodies hint towards Michelangelo's true skill, sculpting, which we see in full effect in his statue of David.
Now we are focused on the statue of David. It is a 17th sculpture created by Michelangelo in the year 1501. During the High Renaissance, Michelangelo created figures that works focus on the balance, harmony, and ideal form. David showcased these traits through his lifelike, a symmetrical posture, and his realistic and high detail anatomy. In most depicts of David that have been made through history, artists tend to portray him as a young boy. They also commonly depict to capture the moment after he has slain Goliath. Michelangelo, however, depicts David as a young man. He also shows him in the minute before his battle, looking determined and ready. This shows Renaissance ideal of virtue, curiosity, and desire. The sculpture is also very realistic. The artist David is a new man with a very muscular physique. His veins are visible in his arm and hands, and it is these details that allow it to capture the idea of the High Renaissance.
So for the Raphael, along with the Da Vinci and the Michelangelo, the Raphael was an influential figure of the High Renaissance movement in Italy. So he created works that beautifully expressed the classical spirit of harmony and beauty. So the School of Athens, for this Raphael's greatest work, the School of Athens was painted in the Vatican at the same time that Michelangelo was working on the Sistine Chapel. He was also commissioned by the Pope Julius II to decorate apartment on the second floor of the Vatican. So the painted between the 1508 and the 1511, it is located in the first of the four rooms designed by the Raphael, the Sant'Isa della Signatura. The Raphael's painting bridges together art, religion, science, and philosophy in a way that perfectly capture what the Renaissance was all about. The Renaissance theme of the humanisms are in four presence, the especially through the characters reflected in the painting.
Although the painting was for Vatican, it does not focus on religious aspect, and the Christ himself is nowhere to be found. Instead, the focus is on two of the most important figures of ancient Greek, Plato and Aristotle, and the desire of knowledge and virtue they represented. The painting perfectly shows the Renaissance value ancient scholars and classical mythology. In it, the old philosophers are teaching the younger ones, who are eagerly listening and consuming their knowledge. This can represent the way in which followers of the Renaissance glorify and idealize the ancient culture, which they learned heavily from. Unlike those who found history useless, the Renaissance value the past. The theme of humanism is also shown in how the love of man and the respect of his virtue and ideals are valued over the love of religions. For instance, everyone is listening closely to Plato and Aristotle, who are like shining beacons of knowledge. Their different ideologies are also represented by their figure, as Plato points up to symbolize his stress on a higher and internal world. After this one, Aristotle holds his hand down, reflecting his belief that only reality is the one we currently live and exist in. This different philosophy embodied the Renaissance value for debate and intellectualism. Unity is also represented in how the school is full of great scholars, philosophers, scientists, and mathematicians of different times all together in the same place, learning and growing from one another in harmony. Overall, the work is a reflection of Renaissance art and in all its glory.
So, there you have it. One time period, three major artists, several different works of art. Overall, these paintings and sculptures help us to see how the Renaissance was a time period that values humanism, realism, virtue, honor, and wisdom over wealth and freedom. It influenced and was influenced by its artists, creating a legacy of work to be loved for all of the eternity. And
We hope you enjoyed our presentation and thank you for your time.